Let's bow our heads and let's pray. Jesus, we honor you tonight, and we thank you for the privilege, Lord, to come together with such a choice group of school parents as we are this evening. And I pray that you'll give us clarity of thought and unity of mind as we delve into this material tonight. And so just give us wisdom and guidance, we pray, and we ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. So the reason you're here tonight is because you either are a student going into the Learning Center, or you are a parent of a student going into a Learning Center, or you are a parent that possibly might have a student going into the Learning Center. Okay, and we say that because I realize there's some of you parents who maybe are new parents to the school. Maybe your student has not even been through a diagnostic test yet and evaluated, and so we're not sure which curriculum is going to be the best for them. We have two curriculums. In just a moment, I'm going to pass out to each of you a PACE, we call it, which is a packet of educational material, and this is in the Learning Center. These materials are used. Now, at Sunshine, we use what we call, give me the next slide, we call it the best of both worlds, okay? In 35 years, actually about 36 and a half, Sister Calvert and I have been in Christian education, 34 years at Sunshine. And we have found that the best two curriculum in the whole world is the ABECA curriculum and the ACE curriculum. I'm going to tell you the goods and bads about both tonight, but I'm particularly going to be talking to you about the ACE material tonight. We have, through the years, we have run the school with totally one type of curriculum. We have tried Bob Jones' curriculum, switched on Schoolhouse, Alpha and Omega. We've tried different curriculums through the years, and we've come to the conclusion that the combination of these two curricula give us the best results, okay? And so I'll tell you why with that tonight. But we exclusively want to talk to you tonight about the Learning Center. Give me that next slide, if you will. Okay, in the ACE Learning Center, ACE stands for Accelerated Christian Education. It's an exciting time. There's a lot of neat things going on in the Learning Center. And I tell you what, Lisa, would you take these and pass these out for me tonight? It really doesn't matter. Just give everybody one, whatever it is, of any kind. And if you don't get too engrossed in the material there tonight while we're talking, I will lead you through that in a little bit. Now, you're going to have material from all grade levels and different subjects, and so the particular one that you have may not apply for your student or for you if you are a student, but at least you'll get the concept of what it's all about. By the way, Mrs. Spear is our high school, one of our high school supervisors, and she's also our athletic director. She said, Brother Calvert said, give him my excuse for dressed like I am tonight, but we are having a volleyball clinic going on this week here at Sunshine, and Miss Spear, being our athletic director, has been busy all day long, and now she's stayed over for the meeting here tonight. We're glad to have her here. This is a packet of accelerated Christian education material. The student in the Learning Center, instead of getting the large textbook, which represents the entire year's work in that subject, will be getting bite-sized portions like this. And once they've completed this, they go to the next portion, okay? But it's giving them a little bit bite-size at a time. Now, the few slides that we have here to show you show a few shots of a typical Learning Center. And let's look at the next slide here. There's always neat things going on in the Learning Center. It's an exciting place, but a very educational spot. The next slide again shows us another shot of the Learning Center. And, by the way, I'll tell you about that in a moment. Okay, let's shoot another one. The next screen, okay, and the next one. Okay, the individualized diagnostic that we give a student going into this type of Learning Center. This program is individualized and it's accelerated. Now, it's individualized because every student is giving a diagnostic test, and after completing the diagnostic test, we can see precisely which step-by-step skills they have mastered through the years and which ones they have not. Every student, by the time they're in school a few years, are going to have some things they know very well. There were some things they were exposed to that they did not master. They didn't learn it quite so well. We call those learning gaps. And so every student, and of course the higher, if they come into us at the 7th grade level, they're going to have far more learning gaps than if they come to us at 3rd or 4th grade level. With this individualized curriculum, we can pinpoint which packet of material, which small bite-sized portion represents that learning gap that they have. And if you'll notice on the front of your page there, it has a number at the bottom. I don't know what yours may be, but mine says 1056. And that simply represents that this is number 56 in math. That's all it means. And so the student, after the diagnostic test, we may find that they did not know the skills in math number 43, but they did know the skills in 45, 46, and 47. But they did not know 48 and 49. They may have done well on 50, but not 51 and 52. And so by giving them this precise diagnostic test correlated with this curriculum, we can give them an individualized prescription for their curriculum for the year. It will be different than every other student in the Learning Center because it's individualized precisely for them. Now, some of you may relate to the fact, like in the government school system, they may have an English class that's called an X English class, a Y English class, and a Z English class. One of those being far advanced students, the others being average students, the others being the students that have some weakness of some kind. Or they may call it English 1, 2, 3, or they may give it different names, but they're all maybe the same grade level, but you understand what I'm getting at there. They can break it down into 3 portions. We can break it down. If we have 10 students coming in, we don't break it out into 3 separate ones. We can break it down into 10 separate ones and give every student a precise prescription for exactly what they need. Now, you understand why we can do that as you see the way the Learning Center operates and as we progress through the material here. In our traditional Abeka classrooms, the teacher stands before the class, teaches the material, teaches the same material to the whole class, whatever it is. In that grade level, chapter 1, page 3, she teaches it to everyone in the class. Then they go to page 4, and then 5, the next chapter, and everyone marches through it together. It's easy to understand that some students are going to grasp it quickly. They're ready to go to the next page in the next chapter, maybe even before the rest of the class, man, and they're getting bored because they've got to wait for the teacher to go through it. There's other students that can't grasp it quite as quickly as the teacher is putting forth the material. And so therefore, when it comes test time, they don't do too well. But what do? They go on to chapter 2 with the rest of the class, and so forth. And so the more they advance through the years in a traditional teacher-lectured classroom like that, the more they're going to have some learning gaps. Now, in this individualized learning center, with each student getting precisely number 54 and then jumping to 57 or whatever their prescription was that it showed that they needed, they're getting the material they need exactly. It's individualized. We can do that because instead of the teacher lecturing the material all day, the teacher is free to move from student to student, helping them individually on a one-to-one basis as the student needs the help. They'll get far more one-on-one attention in the individualized learning center. The teacher is free to do that because the material, to an extent, is self-instructional. Now, by that, what I mean is, it will explain a new concept, then it will show them examples of that concept, and then they go ahead and do it. Now, I have, for instance, a math pace in hand. You may have a social studies, English, or I don't know what you have. But here's the way it works, for instance. If it was multiplying fractions, okay, it would explain how to multiply a fraction. Then it would show them examples showing step by step of multiplying a fraction, and then there would be several fractions for them to go ahead and multiply. If a student reads the new explanation, they look at the examples, and they say, got it, I understand. They go ahead and start trying each one of the problems, okay? But if a student reads the explanation, looks at the example, and says, I still don't get it, okay? At the student desk, they will have a set of flags like this. They would simply take their flag and place it up on the top of their desk. There's a little hole to stick it in. And that signifies to the teacher that student has a question. And so the student receives the one-on-one help from the teacher. The teacher may be on the other side of the classroom. She sees the flag go up. She heads over there. She says, could I help you? He says, I don't understand this section right here. And so one-to-one, and can you imagine how more freely students will ask questions if they know they're asking it just them and the teacher instead of having to ask it before the entire class? So they will ask for help much more. Ask our teachers because they're busy all day running from flag to flag all the way across the learning center helping the students. Now, the teacher can do that, let me repeat again, because she is not tied up lecturing the material all day long. She's free to go to this student, then to that one, then to this one, then to this one, giving them help one-on-one as they need it. Also, let's go ahead and look at the next slide for a moment. Okay, this material is accelerated. Now, by accelerated, what we mean by that, you remember I mentioned to you how that in a traditional classroom with a teacher lecturing the material, there would be some students that would say, I got it. And they could go ahead and they're sitting there bored waiting for the teacher to finish lecturing the material. There's other students, they get through it, and I wish they'd repeat that one more time. So you've got this wide span of students in there. So the teacher has to kind of direct it toward the center of the class so that maybe it'll catch these and maybe it won't leave these two bored. She's teaching it toward the middle of the class. Now, with this curriculum, each packet will represent approximately 3 weeks' work in that subject, okay? So the student may have 5 or 6 different subjects. They may have a science and an English and a math and all at the same time, each one representing 3 weeks' work in English, 3 weeks' work in science, and so forth. Some students will complete this in a week and a half or 2 weeks instead of 3. Another student may take them 3.5 weeks to complete it. But they test on it when they are ready to test on it, not when the rest of the class. So the student that's having some problems, and they're coming in a traditional classroom, we finish chapter 1, everybody test on it. Boom. They failed the test. What do they do now? They go to chapter 2. Okay? Now, I'm not running down our traditional classrooms, okay? But tonight you're here because I want to emphasize to you the benefits of the accelerated, individualized learning center. Okay? Now, you're learning, well, how do you know when they're ready to test on it and whatever? And we're going to get into that. But here's the thing. When they do take the test over this one, if they score 80% or better, they're allowed to go to the next one. If it took them a week and a half, or if it took them 3 weeks, they're allowed to go. So that's why it's called accelerated. A student can complete a year and a half's work. We have some students that will complete 2 years' work in an accelerated learning center. They see it, they grasp it, and they say, hey, boom, 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 I can do that. There's other students that if they've got it there in front of them to ponder over, read it, and then back up and look at it again and read it, yeah, they can get it. But listening to the teacher, and sometimes the auditory part doesn't connect real good, and they go ahead anyway, and the student's saying, I wish I could look back. I wish they'd repeat that one more time, you know. And so this works better for many students. It works good on both ends, for the very advanced student or also for the student who is having a little tougher time than some of the other students. Okay, let's look at the next slide. This is a typical, what we call a student office. This will be the student's desk in the Learning Center. These are lined around the perimeter of the classroom. Each student having their own individual office like this with, you can see the little dividers on each side of the office, gives them a little private area so that they don't get so easily distracted or interrupted by their neighbor, and it just really helps them focus on what they're supposed to be focusing on. Let's go to the next slide. You'll notice that in front of them, sitting at the desk, there's the flags that I told you about. And if they have an academic question, they would pull out the Christian flag, stick it up. The teacher knows before they get there, they have a question about their academic work. If the teacher sees the American flag sticking up, the teacher knows before they ever get over that student, they either need to sharpen their pencil, or they need an emergency trip to the restroom, or they're needing to score their material, okay? And so I'll explain those things to you. Of course, you understand the restroom and sharpen the pencil, so I'll explain the other one. If you'll look into your, let's go to the next slide. Let's go ahead and do that. Okay, now, this is what we call a progress calendar. Colloquial, we call it a star chart, okay? Each star represents one of these packets of material that have been completed successfully, okay? Now, you'll notice that this progress calendar is divided into 4 squares. Each one of those squares represents a 9-week period of school. There are 4 9 weeks. They'll be getting 4 report cards during the school year. And so this first square represents the first 9 weeks grading period. And you'll notice that this particular student has 3 stars in every subject in that first quarter. That's our target that we shoot for the student. This way, at the end of the school year, they will have completed 3, 6, 9, 12 of these in each subject. Typically, 12 of these English packets will equal 1 year's work. Okay? So that's why I say some students may complete 15. They may complete 20. Okay? And if a student is, for instance, coming into Sunshine and they have quite a few learning gaps back behind them, we push for more than this. We want them to complete more than 12, so we're gaining on their weaknesses. Now, even if they only do 12, keep in mind, they're not doing them all consecutively. They're probably going to be doing number 34, number 35, jumping to number 38 and 39, jumping to 43, and so forth, depending upon their individualized diagnostic test that we gave them. But we would like to move them up. We want, the object is that we get the maximum potential out of every student. And you and I know that the maximum potential of one student is not going to be what the maximum potential is for another student. They're all individuals. But the Bible says, to whom much is given, much is required. To whom little is given, little is required. Okay? So there's some students that might be in this learning center, and they're pushing hard and doing their very best to accomplish 12 of these in each subject for the year. There's other students, if they only did 12, we know that they really didn't put forth much effort at all. And so we're expecting much more out of those students. Is that okay if we expect more out of one than we do the other? Actually, if you have several children, you do it the same way, don't you? There's some of them will take care of the chores and responsibilities, and the others, if you can just get them dressed in time for school, you've done well, And so we kind of operate the same way. Let's look at the next slide. This is a controlled learning center. Now, let me tell you this, that these 2 curriculums I told you we believe are the most fantastic curriculums for a Christian school or private school, actually for any school on the face of the planet. And but any tool is only as good as the person that's using the tool. Some guys can take a hammer and a saw, and they'll build a beautiful house over here. You give another guy a hammer and a saw, and when he finishes, you don't know whether it's a birdhouse or whether he's trying to build a tree. You have no idea, And so it depends on who's using the tools. But we've found out if these 2 tools are used successfully, there's great results with them. For probably 12, I don't remember for sure, 12 or 14 years, I served as a representative in the state of Florida, visiting a list periodically each year of Christian schools across Florida, when I would go and give them assistant visits, I would walk into their learning centers, and I'll tell you this. I saw some excellent schools. I saw some average schools. And I saw some weak schools. Okay? Using the same tool. And so don't make your judgment because you've seen someone else use a Becca curriculum or use the ACE curriculum. It's how the curriculum is used and who's in charge of it is what makes the difference. Mrs. Spear in one of our learning centers was trained by me, and I lowered the hammer as I trained her. I said, you are going to learn what a strict learning center is. You're going to learn how when the controls and the guidelines are abided by properly, you're going to learn what success is. She passed the test. She did well. I'm not sure whether I had to give her any detentions or not, but she's nodding her head. But anyway, she learned well. And so now she trains our other teachers that are going to be working in an accelerated learning center. There are guidelines and controls built into the program that when those are adhered to properly with a teacher that's qualified, a teacher that has a heart for what she's doing, it will be a successful classroom. Every student in there will achieve their greatest potential, whatever that is for that particular student. I want to share with you some of those guidelines and some of those controls that make it a successful learning center. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, in this slide you see a goal chart, we call it. A gold card or a gold chart is where the student will put the work that they expect to accomplish that day. Across the top of the chart, you'll notice our particular subjects. And this one it says Algebra, English 3, American History, and so forth. But whatever class it is, or whatever grade level they're in, the subjects will be listed across the top. Down the side, you'll notice there's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So if it's Monday, for instance, they would have goals for Monday, which maybe they're ready for page 4 through 7. In geography, they might be ready for pages 15 through 19, and so forth. Those would be listed all across there for Monday. Those would be on there before they start the day in the morning. As they progress through their work through the day, when one subject is completed, they would simply draw one diagonal line through that subject, meaning that goal is completed. And then they would proceed to their next one and work on it. Now, in this procedure, as they go through it, the teacher at any time through the day walking around the learning center can immediately tell whether a student has completed one subject for the day or whether they've completed 3 for the day. And this is adhered to very strictly because these guidelines must be accomplished. Now, you're going to have a question that's going to come to your mind a little later. You're going to say, well, I understand the guidelines, but what if a student doesn't do what they're supposed to do? Well, I'll show you in just a minute what happens. Okay, so the goals that are not completed at the end of the school day, let's go to the next slide. The student would receive a little slip like this, which is called a homework slip. On that homework slip, it says English, page 14 through 16 are not finished, and American history, page 20 is not finished. That would go home with the student that afternoon. They show it to their parent. The parent signs it. It comes back in the next morning, and they turn it into the teacher. That lets us know that the parent knows they have homework when they come in, okay? And so, but what if the student comes back in and the homework slip is not signed? And the student says, oh, I finished it, I got it done, I just didn't have mom sign it. Ooh. But the guidelines were you're supposed to have a parent's signature. And the reason is we don't want to just get the work done. We want you to know what's going on also. Because this has got to be a teamwork thing that we do, working together. We're here to help you make your students successful. And so that's the way it works. That's a gold card called pages 4 through 7 in science. Okay? They're finished with it. They have every question completed, no problem. And now they've gotten to the point at the bottom of the page, it says, score your work. I want you to look through the pace that you have in your hand, and look through a couple, 3 pages, and down at the bottom you'll probably find a spot where it says score your work. It may say stop here and score your work. There'll be a little square by it to put a check mark in, and it could be in the middle of the page, but usually it's going to be at the bottom. If you found one, raise your hand. Half of you have found one. Okay. Anyone has not found one, I'm going to have the person next to you show you and help you. You have not found one? Oh, you have found one. Anyone who has not found one? Okay, don't be afraid to ask questions before the class. I'll get you a flag if that'll help you better. Okay? Okay. Now, so at this point, the student raises their flag, their American flag, okay, which means I need to sharpen my pencil, or I need to score, or I got to go to the bathroom quick, okay? And so they put the American flag up. The teacher goes over and the student says, I need to score my work, okay? Sometimes a student is going to have their packet just like this, all closed up. I need to go score my work. The teacher's going to say, what work do you want to score? And they'll say, oh, my science. And they'll say, which pages do you want to score? And they'll say, oh, it's, these 2 pages right here. And so the teacher is going to kind of look down that page that they're wanting to score, takes their pace, and goes to the score table. At that score table, there will be a red pen there. No pencils, just red pens. The student will open up to the pages that they're ready to score, and they check their own work that they just finished. They will check each problem with the score key, okay? Like this says, English 93 score key, okay? The score key is at the score table. They will lay their work up beside of it, and they will check each question. If it's fine, if they've got it correct, fine. Oops, I missed that one. They will take the red pen, put an X beside that number. They'll go on and check them, put a red X beside each number that's incorrect. When they finish, they will go back to their seat, back to their student office. They will work those math problems again, or they will go back and try to find who the guy was that founded Florida, or whatever the question was. They'll go back and try to correct all of those answers. When they have them corrected, American flag goes up again. Teacher comes over and they say, may I rescore my work? The teacher then looks at the material, looks at where the red X's are, and sees that the student has corrected those problems correctly, or at least most of them are correct, to show that the student really has earnestly tried to do it properly. She gives them permission to go back to the score table again. No pencil, goes there, picks up a red pen, checks these again. If it's correct, they'll put a circle around the red X. If it's not correct, they leave the red X there, and they go check the next one. Okay, but they still have 1 or 2 that is still wrong. They lay the red pen down, they go back to their seat, they do the problem again. Permission again, okay? Usually, once to the score table, second time to the score table, takes care of it. They have everything right, every red X circled, everything on that page is perfect. At this time, they circle the page number at the bottom of the page. That way, as the teacher goes by, the teacher can quickly look and see they've corrected these pages. Everything is correct on those pages. I know what you're thinking. I'm going to answer your question in just a moment. Okay. When they go through a few pages and pass one checkup and another checkup, they'll come back to the back of the book. Look at the back of your book. One of the last 2 or 3 pages, you will see it will say self-test at the top. When you find a self-test, raise your hand. Okay. Is there anyone who has not found a self-test yet? Okay. Help this father over here find a self-test. If someone close by him has one, just show him yours. Okay, that's fine. Okay, got it. Okay, here's what a self-test is. When a student works all the way back to this point, what have they done in that packet so far? They have completed all of the questions. They have corrected all the wrong answers. And so they have everything correct in their packet up to that point. They raise their flag, teacher comes over, and they say, I'm ready to take my self-test. The teacher at that point will look through every page. They'll thumb through the pages, not absolutely checking every question, but they're going to look back through to see if the student has reasonably scored everything correctly. They're going to look at particularly those that were marked wrong and see, what about these here? Do you have a good understanding of these now? Do you understand how that you have to invert the fraction here? Do you understand that? Okay, show me how to do this one. Okay, that's what happens at that point. And so when the teacher feels that the student is ready for that self-test, the teacher will initial it there where it says self-test, give the student permission to go ahead and take the self-test. Now, the self-test is just what it says, a self-test. It's to let the student and the teacher know if that student is ready for the final test on that piece of material. So the student, when they complete the self-test, American flag goes up, teacher comes over, and they say, could I have permission to go check my self-test? The teacher looks at it, says, okay, go ahead. The student goes to the score table, pulls out the score key for that particular self-test, and the same procedure checks each question with the score key. And the ones that are wrong, they mark a red X by it. When they get back to their seat, they will correct the answers, go back, rescore. Of course, teacher inspecting it in between each step. Now, here's the thing. The first time they took this self-test, if they score 80% or better, the teacher is going to say, looks like you know the material pretty well. You're ready for the final test. If the student scores 70, 60 on this self-test, the teacher's not going to let them take the final test because they know they're not ready. Now, there may be several reasons they're not ready. Usually, it's because we find that they did not score the work properly back here. They didn't go change that wrong answer and rework it and achieve the right answer. So what have they done? They've memorized the wrong answer. So when they got to the self-test, that's why they scored so poorly on it. Okay? Okay, now, just suppose somehow they were able to fool the teacher through this whole thing. Somehow they were able to get through there, and they had several they didn't mark wrong and didn't correct them, and they think, pretty sly. Got by with that one. And they move through it that way. Now what happens? Okay, you scored 80% or better, 90% or better on the final test. Whoa, pretty good on self-test. Now you're ready to turn that packet of material in. We'll give you the final test. You'll go over to the test table, take your pencil only. We'll give you the final test. You'll take the final test on that packet of material. And before you get up from there, the teacher's going to come over and take the final test, and the teacher grades the final test. Now, this may be at the end of a week and a half working on science, maybe at the end of 3 weeks. The teacher grades it. If they score 80% or better, remember, she gives them the next packet of material. If they score less than 80%, the teacher presents that proud student with a brand new pace, the same number as the one they just completed, and they get to do it again. Whoa. So now we have controlled learning. Time is the variable, how much time they're going to spend on science number 74. Learning is the constant. Plus, let's go to the next slide. This is a corrective action notice, better known as a detention slip. If the teacher discovers, John, here's why you failed the test. Look at this. You did not mark that one wrong. And look at this one. You circled the red X saying it's correct, and it's not. And when you failed your test, I wondered why. And I looked back through your pace a little more carefully, and look what I discovered. He tried to deceive me, but it didn't work. You didn't pass his test. Now you got to do this whole thing over again. Plus, I have this cute little note here now. She doesn't say it that way. That sounds a little sarcastic. But what she does, she says, and so, John, what I need you to do, I need you to take this corrective action notice home and have mom or dad sign it tonight, because tomorrow you're going to have to stay after school for 30 minutes or 45, no more than an hour. But you're going to have to stay after school tomorrow because you did not score your work properly. Well, I just hurried through it, and I didn't even notice it. I know, but next time you'll be more careful and make sure that you do it correctly, okay? I'm not mad at you. I just want you to know that we have to do it correctly because that's the only way that I can know for sure that you're learning the material. Everybody with me so far? Okay. So that's kind of the way the trail of a pace works as they work through a pace of accelerated, individualized material. Questions at this point? Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. Okay, sometimes that can be done. And the question was about having a student that wants to excel and move up grades and so on. Okay, here's what happens. They can possibly, and I say possibly because if this student has failed grades in the past, then yes, I would say that's possible. If the student is simply in their proper grade level now and they're just wanting to buzz on ahead, then that needs to be evaluated carefully. And the reason I say it, because for my son, for instance, my oldest son, was in this type of material. We were using it even in the lower grades at that time. He worked like 2 years ahead of his grade level, of where he was. He, ate it up and buzzed through it. What I saw was going to happen. A student can work farther academically than what their maturity level is really ready for, okay? And so that's one thing it's got to be guarded against. Sometimes parents feel that if a student can boom, 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 and they're ready for college at age 14, whoa, I'm sorry. It's typically not good for a student, I don't care how sharp they are, to go to college at age 14. Number one, they're going to have all types of social problems, emotional problems, mental problems, and everything else. And anyway, what I did with my son, they were coming out with a new edition of the curriculum at that time. So I simply put him back, I don't remember if it was 1 level or 2, but put him back in the new edition of curriculum and let him work through that because it just reinforced and enriched what he had already accomplished to make sure you're getting it. You're really learning it. Boy, you know it now as you're going through. And, of course, he didn't like the idea of the fact of, doing that. But it was really the best thing for him at the time. So that's one thing we need to do. If a person is working too far advanced, sometimes we give them another subject which will just broaden their learning instead of zooming them ahead. But yes, there are times when that could happen and take place, okay? Typically, by doing, instead of 12 per year, by doing more, what we're trying to do is take care of some of those learning gaps of the past and get them up to the grade level where they actually should be. And so if they are, and let me tell you this, most students coming in at 7th or 8th grade level, your average students coming out of the public school are going to be probably showing a year and a half worth of gaps, things they've been exposed to but did not master. Does that mean that they come in as an 8th grader and we're going to put them in a 6th grade? No. If they're transferred to us an 8th grader, we'll enroll them as an 8th grader. And then we can give them material on their academic level in each subject, whatever that is. And there again, their academic level, remember, there may be a couple of paces that coming out of that 6th grade level. There may be 6 paces coming out of that 7th grade level, and then they move on up to 8th grade level. So in that respect, yes, it is bumping them on up, moving them on up. So it's usually used more to bring them up like this than to push them like this. Most of the new students coming in have not been. Yes, the ones that are, no, wait a minute, I'm sorry. If they are, for instance, an 8th grader now, and they're in one of our Abeka classes, and they're going into the 9th grade, which will be, most of the subjects will be this accelerated. They have not been tested, no. Now, if they're doing well where they were, there's no need for us to test them. If they were really struggling in like the step-by-step skills of math and English, we will have to test them, and that will help us determine, like in math, for instance, whether... Somebody else with a question? Okay, what have we got on the next slide here? Whoa, okay. Some of the subjects have videos that go along with them. This, for instance, is the biology And sometimes people ask about our biology students, do you slice open earthworms, and do you do that kind of stuff? And, well, no, we don't slice them open in class, but we all sit and watch the big screen while somebody else slices them open, okay? So we do have laboratory. This counts as a laboratory science, and so we do have those things happening, which takes care of that. Now, our algebra class, for instance, the way we've been doing that is the students are working on packets of material, but Mrs. Spear has been teaching that class, taking those students out as a class, as a whole together, and working with them through it pretty much together, all together, but working it as a pace. Now, in the classroom, for instance, as they're working, say they're working through American history, and it'll have 12 paces. You'll have some students that will complete the first one, and they're already halfway through the second one. This person is just finishing up number one. So you can see what's happening a few weeks later. You're going to have one student that may be on packet number 5, and this one's still on number 3. Okay? That's the way it works. That's what happens. And it's the teacher's responsibility to push them along as quickly as possible as they can master the material. Back to the goal chart, okay? There's a lot of things built into this program that teach responsibility to the students. And you're going to see this happening to your students. I mean, of course, in our Becca program, there's a lot of neat things happening there that are teaching mannerisms and teaching character and so forth. But in this program, there's still some other steps that are taken to develop their lives as a whole. Remember the goals that they're setting here each day? Now, let me just blow your socks off, okay? The student sets their own goal of what they're going to accomplish that day. Yeah, okay? Now, do let me explain before you get all nervous. Each day, when they finish their goals for that day, and they've got a slant through them all, okay? The last, or maybe they aren't even all completed, and they have some homework going home. But the last thing of the day before they go home, the teacher reminds everyone, okay, we got about 5 minutes left today. Everyone make sure you have your goals set for tomorrow. So the student will come over here and he says, science. Today I completed pages 1 through 5. Tomorrow on Tuesday, I'm going to put pages 6 through 10. Okay? And so in other words, they set their own goal. And you're thinking, you don't know my boy. He'll put page 1 on Monday and page 2 on Tuesday. We do know your boy. We've had a whole bunch of them just like him. And so what happens here? After the students set their goals, the teacher, either that day after school or the next morning at the beginning of school, is going to be going by and checking each student's goals to see if they have set reasonable goals. Now, I say that because some students would set 1 page each day, and they never accomplish much. Other students would set 6 or 7 pages every day and would never get their goals finished. Okay? And so the teacher quickly learns the capability of each student and helps them get adjusted to whether they should be setting 3 or 4 pages in math or whether they should be setting 6. Okay? That's exactly what's happened. And so you can say, well, then the teacher is setting the goals then instead of the student. You can say that if you want. We like to say the student is. Give them the responsibility, and then us just overshadow it to assure that they are doing it properly. There's several things that you remember. The scoring, the same thing. Giving them the responsibility to score their daily work. But they also have to reap the consequences if they don't do it properly. And so it's teaching responsibility again to the students. So there's a lot of things built into the program that teach that responsibilities to the student. Any other questions along the way, feel free to raise your flag, okay? And by the way, when you raise your flag, go ahead and work on something else until the teacher gets there, because she's very busy giving someone else the individualized attention she's going to give you in just a moment, okay? And by the way, don't be waving the flag at me either, okay? That will get you one of those cute little slips that you take home, Okay. Ms. Spear, help me. Is there anything that I should have covered here tonight that we haven't? I want you to feel comfortable to know what's happening in that learning center. We're going to go over, we haven't been quite an hour yet, and an hour was my target, and I'm surprised that I'm right on it almost. But we're going to go over, and actually, some of you have never seen the learning center. We're going to walk in there and show you. There's a couple of desks that are set up with a goal chart, with a progress calendar, and just like you saw on the pictures, and so that you can actually firsthand take a look at the Learning Center, see the score table, and you can know exactly what's happening. Question? I'm sorry I didn't hear that. Somebody pass it on up here to me. Or just tell me a little louder. Will you know which teachers are? Probably not until about a week before school, okay? Because we will, upon seeing what the enrollment is in each class and so forth, then our teachers don't even know what classes they're going to be teaching yet. Some of them don't, okay? I always tell them, you just be ready, and we want to put them where they're going to be most useful and where everyone can be most successful. And so that is not totally decided yet. And let me say again that there may be some of your students that after we meet them, maybe some have just enrolled in the last day or two, and maybe some that I haven't even met yet or that we haven't evaluated at all. We will have a testing day coming up where we want to give them a diagnostic test, get a little feeling of exactly where they are. Our returning students coming out of the traditional classroom, we will probably this next week be looking over those and seeing this one, and this one. We want to call them in and get a diagnosis on them so that we feel comfortable at where and how we can make them successful, okay? Like maybe a sixth grader that just finished sixth grade, we may determine that we think they would do better in the accelerated individualized learning center than they would in the ABECA, okay? Now, we like to, if they're in the ABECA, we like to keep them in there until they go into ninth grade. Now, you may ask, well, how can we start this in the ninth grade with everyone on it in the ninth grade and just selective students in the lower grades? The reason is because the older students get, the more wide span there's going to be between their abilities. Remember the XYZ English class? Okay, by the time they get to fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, seventh grade, eighth grade, now it's OPQRSTUV classes, you know. And so in the Learning Center, we can take care of that. One more example that I need to tell you here. In the Learning Center, since it is individualized, each one working on their own material at their own student office, okay, and the teacher going to them when they need the help. This way, you can have a student working on physical science, the next student working on math, the next student working on American history, the next student working on a different level of history or a different level of English. All the way around the classroom, students working on different materials. The only thing that has to be in place, you have to have teachers in the classroom that are capable of helping them on each one of those subjects. So it matters not to the teacher if she goes to this student and answers an English question, goes to this one and answers a math question, goes to this one and helps them on their American history. I mean, most of our teachers in the Learning Center have been doing this for years. They can almost quote you what's on page number 4 of that packet, you know. Before they ever get there, they know what the student is going to ask them. But that's one of the neat things about this. Another thing about the Individualized Learning Center like this, any number of students can be taken out of the class at any time to go out for a typing class or go out for whatever other class that they might be in. And when they come back in, they move right into their offices, take up their work right where they left off. They didn't miss out on anything. You can't do that in a traditional classroom. If they leave for 40 minutes, they missed all of the lectured material. But in this Learning Center, you can do that. So it's more versatile that we can have them going out for computer classes, or different students will go out for a Spanish class, and different students out for whatever, and they come back in and take up right where they left off. And so it is a neat program when it's operated properly. One of the concepts you go by is a little picture of a donkey pulling a cart that's loaded with hay. But extending in front of the donkey is a stick going out there with a carrot hanging down in front of the donkey. The guy riding on the cart has a little crack whip in his hand. And what we say is, you have to determine how heavy is the load, how hungry is the donkey, How big is the carrot, and how effective are the controls? And when you have all those things in order, you pull the load successfully, the donkey's happy, and success has its own reward. Achievement has its own reward when a student achieves. And so, plus they're in the Learning Center. There's all kind of neat contests going on all the time, sometimes splitting up in teams, and each team, as they complete stars on their star chart, and, the first one, they get an extra field trip or something, and so everybody's encouraging everybody else, we got to get the work done, and all kind of neat things like it, plus the honor rolls. Oh, by the way, that's something I need to share with you, and I think this is going to be the end. Report card time, okay? As we mentioned to you, our target is 3 packets per subject per grading period. So when you get the report card, hopefully Johnny will have completed 3. Now, we have a scaled grading chart that we go by. And if Johnny has completed 3 paces successfully in that quarter, he will get at least a C on his report card. If he scored higher on those paces, he will get a B. If he scored higher, he will get an A, or a minus or a plus, Okay. Now, if he got 2, even if they were both 100s, he will not get an A. Matter of fact, it may be a B minus. Okay? Can't get any higher than that, even though they're 100s. What if he gets 4 or 5? Okay, now he can get an A by having a 93 average instead of having a 95. Okay, he did more work, he scored a little bit lower, but he can still accomplish an A. And so the target is to get 3 done, score as high on them as you can. That's the way to get a good letter grade. But that kind of helps you understand what letter grades mean when you see that letter grade. Now, if they're in high school, when it comes the end of the semester signifies I finished a half credit in that subject, okay, if you've passed it. So at the end of the semester, they may have, instead of an A, B, or C, they may have an I, which means incomplete, which means they haven't completed 6 paces for a half credit. So depending on how they do the rest of the year will determine whether they get the entire credit or whether they finish out the year with just a half credit. When they finish up the school year, they should have completed 12 in that subject. If they haven't, they will receive either 0 credit, a half credit, or if they've completed them all, a full credit. We don't give 7/10 of a credit or 8/12 of a credit. We don't do that. And so what we try to do is get them along, and if they still have a pace or 2 lacking at the end of the year, come to summer school, finish up your credit. Because if you only had 10 or 11 of those done for your high school credit, and you don't come to summer school and finish it, then you get a half credit, which equals 6. And so at the beginning of next school year, you start on number 7. And you do a half year's work for the other half credit. Comprende? Okay. Okay, I think we're ready to make a trip over